Thanks for joining us for an episode of the Cosmopolite Collective. I'm your host, Diana Lordson, and I am here with two guests, Erika and Erika, Erika Blood and Erika Leach. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
And I'm really looking forward to this discussion today because we are going to be talking about all things Antarctica. Am I pronouncing that right? I always say Antarctica, and there's a C in there. Antarctica. So since you ladies are the experts and just went there, is that the correct pronunciation?
I think I say
it sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I want to talk about Antarctica because no one I know has ever been there before. So when I found out that Erika Blood was going to Antarctica, I was really excited, and I made her promise me that she would do a podcast on Antarctica. So here we are, and she brought her friend Erika with her, who went on the trip with her as well. So I just want to first start out with, what made you both decide to go to Antarctica?
So I'll take that one. As it started off, I had done a cruise with my mom to Australia and New Zealand. It was a great mother-daughter trip. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go into some of the ports due to the fungus on the boat's hull. So Viking cruise
Did you say fungus?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was detected in one of the ports when they were doing inspections. So while we still made the best of the trip, we did not go into a lot of the ports and stops along the way. So the company luckily gave us a credit for all the money for the cruise and the airfare package we had. But I had a year to book something. And I just started looking at where Viking cruises go. And I was, I feel like there's plenty of years when I'm older to do cruises and maybe normal areas that are easier to get to. So I said, you know what, let's go to kind of the craziest place they offer. And it was pretty new that this was offered by Viking Cruises. And so I said, I started looking at it and I mentioned it to Erika Blood. And we have traveled to many places around the world together and have such a fabulous time. And she said, okay, I think I'm going to be able to make this happen. And that kind of kicked things off. Yeah.
Wow. Erika, what did you think when she said, let's go to Antarctica?
I was really excited. I was also thinking about, I was planning to move the following year and have some life changes. And so I was like, can I afford to do this trip right now? But I decided it's a trip of a lifetime, and I couldn't think of anyone better to do it with. Like Erika said, we've had a lot of fun adventures together, and I really wanted to be able to experience that with her. So it was a pretty quick yes. It took about a few days for me to have some conversations and then make the decision to join her.
So walk me through how this started. So you get everything. Well, first of all, how did you prepare for this trip? Because I don't even know that I would know what to pack when going to Antarctica. How did you decide what you were going to bring and where, and how long were you there for?
So the whole trip was about 2 weeks. We also had time in Argentina on the front and back end. So that was interesting as far as packing, because our days in Buenos Aires were in the high 80s Fahrenheit. And then we were going to ride around freezing most of the days in Antarctica. Viking Cruises did provide a packing list. So that was very helpful. And then we had some conference calls between the two of us to talk about what we were bringing. And then they did provide some cold weather gear that you submitted your sizes, and then they had that pretty much ready to go. So like these big boots that we wore, the waterproof pants, the big winter jackets. So that lightened the suitcase a bit. You knew that stuff would be on the boat. And then otherwise we had to kind of look at lots of different layers and hats, etc.
Yeah, and they did limit like how many bags you could bring on the boat too.
Oh, really?
Pack to the sky's the limit. Yeah, so it was a mix of having, maybe a couple t-shirts and some shorts, and then having sweaters and other layers because we weren't quite sure how cold it would be once we got down there. So we
Mm-hmm.
went down towards the end of November, so right around Thanksgiving. So we were thinking, it's their early summer, so it
Oh,
could be, freezing, it could be zero. We weren't quite sure how to pack. But luckily, by having that packing list, that was really helpful, and also watching a lot of YouTube videos and
mm.
things online about what people brought and what they needed. We were really lucky that they did provide some of those cold weather items for us because some of the other boats that were going down there for tourism did not provide those. So it's definitely helpful to check the packing list and see what's provided by your tour operator.
So you flew from the DC area. Are you both in the DC area?
I'm
No.
up in New Hampshire, so I flew out of Boston.
Oh, okay. So you flew out of Boston, you flew out of the DC area, and you
Yep.
had to go to Argentina first. And then from Argentina, where did you go then?
So we both flew into Buenos Aires,
Okay.
and we ended up meeting up with our tour operator there, and they make it super easy with the transfers. They meet you at the airport. They have signs. You can't miss them. Erika beat me to the airport, so I definitely saw her first before I saw the tour operator. But so we met in Buenos Aires. We had a night there, and then very early in the morning, basically you put your luggage out. They pick it up early, put it on a bus for you to take it to the airport. They take you to the airport later. So you fly from Buenos Aires to Ushuaia, which is the end of the world. So it's about,
Ooh.
I don't know how long the flight was, 2 or 3 hours maybe.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a medium flight. So it flew us down to the very bottom of Argentina. And then that's where we had a little bit of time on shore to kind of just look around the town and then get onto the boat.
That's so I went to a club called Ushuaia in Ibiza years
Oh,
ago. I had no idea that was like a place or a thing. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you get on the boat and what happens then? Is it just like a normal cruise experience or is it different in terms of like the people that are actually on the boat to go to Antarctica? What was the demographics like?
So
So
Viking
first I
is,
would say,
yeah. Oh, go ahead,
yeah, go
Erica.
ahead. I'll talk about getting on the boat and you could talk about the demographics. So we were really lucky when we first boarded the boat because that area is known for being super cloudy and you can't really see anything. But as we were like getting ready to depart, so it's like the skies opened for us
Hmm.
and like you could see these huge mountains like right behind the town, which was incredible. And you could definitely feel like the boat starting to go. We were on the back of the boat, so we had like our cocktails and we're, like waving at everybody, taking pictures. In terms of the demographics, I'll let Erika talk about that.
So I kind of knew what to expect because of being on a Viking cruise before, and my parents had done a river cruise to them. It's definitely an older demographic. I thought
Okay.
it would be a little bit swing younger, but I mean, we did kayaking one day in the waters around Antarctica, and there was a 90-year-old man with us. So, I mean, props to
Wow.
him. There was quite a few, a lot of couples. And then we met a few like mothers, daughters, groups, sons or sons-in-laws. I think it was a, bucket list trip for a lot of the older people. And they really made sure, even if you had some mobility issues, were wary of maybe getting from the big boat to the smaller boat to shore. The crew and staff were just fabulous and helping out on all that. And then we were kind of, I think, I don't know if I'd say celebrities, but I'd say we were pretty well known on the boat. Just because we were like
Oh,
definitely
you
on the
made
younger
yourself
side.
well known, did you?
Yeah.
Well, I think we stuck out because of our age and then
Yeah.
also just having the same name. So that was very easy for people to remember us. And usually when we travel, we slowly just become the Ericas because
Yeah.
we're typically together. And if we met people, they'd be like, "Oh, we heard about you guys." And we're like, "How? Like, we
Oh,
didn't do anything
wow. So the
crazy."
gossip mills were heavy on the boat.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
Yeah.
so how much did this cost? Because I'm thinking with like the older demographics too, I'm thinking this is not the type of cruise that the young partiers are probably going to go on.
No. And I believe there's an age limit too. You have to be over a certain age, I think, to go on the Viking cruise. So
Yeah.
there weren't any, I don't think anyone under 18 potentially.
Mm.
Yeah.
We didn't really see any young people. It definitely is an investment, and for a trip of a lifetime, like I think we were both ready to make that investment, but it's at least, it really depends when you book. It can range from, I don't know, 10 grand up to 20, 30 grand, depending upon the length of cruise you go on, the room selection,
Wow.
how early in advance you book. So we booked in June, I think,
Yep.
for a November cruise.
Okay.
So right now is the time to book if you're looking.
Wow.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of ships that go there, and the ships that do go there are small. I think the max ship capacity for tourists is like 500 or something. So they're relatively small trips, and so they
Mm.
do fill up pretty quickly. And the season is short. It's November through March, I want to say.
I think the last one was in February. Yeah, for the
Okay.
season. And something
Yeah.
I've realized with Viking and probably other cruise ships do it too is it's kind of this balance of booking early if you have specific dates, but if it's getting closer, and even when we booked in June for November, our package included the airfare, where sometimes when it's further
Mm.
out, they don't include that in the package. So then it's even more expensive. So I
Mm.
think they must have metrics as it gets to,
Yeah.
X number of months out. If they haven't filled the whole boat, then they start offering some of those additional
Yeah.
like airfares included, which, is
And I checked right now, Viking does have airfare included. So if you're
okay.
looking to book, you
Oh
have
my
about 2 weeks
goodness.
to get it on the calendar.
Wow. And so it sounds like you went on the cruise, you were the stars of the ship, and then I want to hear about when you first got to Antarctica. Like, what was that like? What did it feel like when you first made it and stepped foot on the I was gonna say soil, but I thought maybe ice would be more accurate.
Yeah, I mean, what was really cool, and I don't think I had thought about is, well, there were other cruise ships in that port. Like, if you're going to go as a tourist to Antarctica, everyone leaves from Ushuaia, which we
Mhm.
learned about. Even if you were in Australia, which just looking in the map, I would think, oh, maybe Australians would leave on cruises from there. But the area that tourists go, which is really a small part of Antarctica, but it's very regulated by this international organization that tries to leave
Mhm.
as little a bit of an impact on the continent. They really space out where these boats are going. So once we were maybe a few hours away from Argentina, we weren't seeing another boat. To me, it almost felt like we were in our own world or another planet, as it was just the people on that boat. And then for me, the first time we did the landing, this was my seventh continent. So it was very exciting to be like, wow, I actually made it to number seven.
Wow, you've been to all 7 continents?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, travel goals. Okay.
And it was cool. One of the women we'd met in the dining area one day, we passed her as we were hiking on the snow, and she actually had this flag. And she said, "Is it your seventh continent, either of you?" And she pulled it out of her pocket, and someone had passed it along to her. And so I said, my seventh continent. So I got some photos, which was very exciting. I hadn't even thought to bring a sign. So that worked out perfectly.
Oh my goodness. What about you, Erica? What did you think when you stepped on the ice?
It was pretty crazy. Like, I think it's just the first landing was a colony of penguins. So
Mm.
you see the penguins, and as you get closer, you smell the penguins. They
You
are pretty
smell them?
stinky animal. They are so stinky. They are very
Really?
stinky. You do smell them. And we had seen some like swimming in the water, kind of like bobbing, and there's a whole train of them going towards shore. And so you take a Zodiac from the big cruise ship to the mainland, and they'll pull you up and help you get out of the boats. And you're kind of, you're in their special gear, and sometimes you're like in the water getting to the rocks, or you're just like on the rocks. But for us, it was just so much snow. Everything was just covered in snow. Like nothing had really melted yet because it was so early in the season. And so it's just like this vast whiteness. And then it's such a cool contrast with like just the sky, and it's so clean, and just, if the penguins weren't there, you're like, this air would be so fresh because it wasn't a boat. But
No one talks about
it's
how
just
stinky
incredible.
penguins are. It's always like they're so cute and they mate for, or do they mate for life?
Yeah.
Am I wrong on that? Is that penguins, or am I thinking of like
I
whales or
think those
something?
the emperor penguins. I don't know about these penguins.
Yeah, I
We
think
were actually lucky to see two different types of
Oh,
penguins.
nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, in two different scenarios. So when we first got there,
How
we
do
were
they
seeing
smell in the ice though? I mean, I
just
feel
their
like bad smells smell better when it's cold.
It's all the poop that just it's
Ah,
so it just kind of sits on the snow or ice, and I think it's not really, I guess maybe if it was on soil it might sink in, but
and even though it's ice, it doesn't really like snow, or there's no moisture. It's very dry. So it's not like
mm.
things are getting put on top of the snow. Like it's, I don't know, it's not being buried. So it's just there.
My life is forever changed.
Yeah.
I will never think of penguins the same way again.
Yeah, but that landing, you could watch them like mate. It was early in the season for them, so they were just starting their mating ritual. So they would chase each other around. They would like get on each other's backs. You could just, a lot was going on. And then later in the trip, we were a little bit further north, and at that point, those penguins were nesting. So they're
Mm.
building up their nests out of rocks, and they, it's all communal. And then they have these birds coming in, either penguins or these other type of birds, like stealing rocks or like trying to get into their nests. So it's really cool to see just, nature at work. And
Yeah.
um, yeah,
What other kind of wildlife did you see there besides penguins?
the whales were amazing, like especially the humpback whales.
Hmm.
We were really lucky. We were in one of the kind of bar lounge areas one day, and they were actually like doing the breaching where they come jumping out of the water and then fall back in. And it really is incredible to see that. And then it was really interesting too on the boat because there's all these different scientists and lecturers and experts in different areas. So
Hmm.
we got to learn about all the different types of whales that would be in that area, the different seals. We there was also a drone that could, like, someone could operate and would go high up in the air and get
Hmm.
these amazing photos that they would share. So we learned about the humpback whales sometimes work together as a pod or community
Mm.
for eating and hunting. And they make this almost like a swirl in the water by them all swimming around together. And then it pulls in like the really small fish that they eat. So the drone was able to get some amazing footage right in the area that our boat was in. Um,
yeah, they call it like bubble feeding. So using the bubbles that they're blowing as they're like swimming around, they kind of trap these krill. So they're kind of like small shrimp,
yeah.
and
Oh,
they'll come up underneath it and then just, eat it and then kind of like push the water out.
nature is wild, isn't it?
It
Like just how they, I mean,
is.
how all of these things happen is just crazy. But
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
mentioned the researchers, and Antarctica doesn't have an indigenous human population, but there are researchers and explorers. So how did you interact from that with them?
Yeah. So we didn't see any explorers or researchers like actually on the land, but we had a research facility on the boat. So
Hmm.
part of the great thing about our boat is the whole kind of like bottom had this scientific lab. And as Erica mentioned, the scientists were actually going out on some of the landings and excursions with us and actually doing testing of, they had all this gear that they could drop down in the water or do things like on land. And then they kind of report back like a day or two later of like what they were able to collect. You could go in town into their science lab and go under the
Mm.
microscopes and see what they were doing. You could ask them like questions about the geology or about the ice, the wildlife, anything like that. There are different experts in different areas around on the ship, and they'd have certain times of day, like in the afternoons, you could go up to this like expedition central and find someone that would be there to ask them what questions you may have from
Hmm.
either being out on the landing and seeing some of these, wildlife or something. or being able to like, there's a lot of documentaries and, lectures and things like that
Mm-hmm.
on the boat too, from the scientists and also just from like traveling lecturers that knew a lot about the explorers of Antarctica. So really, it was a really great educational piece, I think, to the trip too. So it's not just, laying on the boat, drinking wine, watching the scenery. Like
Darn
there's
it.
a
No,
lot
I'm
to
just
learn,
kidding.
and really respect like nature and how pristine it is down there and how much we don't know about Antarctica.
Yeah, and I have a question about that. So, witnessing, Antarctica is a pretty untouched area. I mean, outside of the researchers, or maybe it's not, and I just don't know what I'm talking about. But did that impact your views at all on like environmental conservation or just the environment in general, just going to a place like Antarctica?
I mean, one thing that really stuck out to me is, as much as these international organizations exist, like all the countries that have research labs, like they work together and they have policies, like you don't leave anything behind. Even human waste, we learned in a documentary,
Mm,
is dried and packaged and shipped back to the country of origin.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very
wow.
intense. But one thing that the scientists on our boat were studying was taking water samples and just finding the microplastics that are in the water there. So, as much as we can affect what we do on the land, the oceans are connected, and that spot,
Hmm.
the Drake Passage we went through, which is one of the craziest passages in the world. That's where you've got the Pacific, Atlantic, and Southern Ocean all coming together.
Mm.
And so it just reminded me of the impacts of, countries far away, that may never even, think about Antarctica and the impact. You're still having that through the ocean.
The wastes are making a way there.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing is like there's no central governing body of Antarctica. It's
Mm,
kind of governed by, like I said, like 30 different countries are part of this like group that work on Antarctica, have their own scientists and research centers. And then if you think about, the impacts of, global warming, like
hmm.
70% of the world's like freshwater reserves are in Antarctica. So as the earth heats up, those are going to start melting and, they could raise the sea levels by like 200 feet, which would flood most of our coast. So it's kind of crazy to see the work that they're doing down there. And yeah, the impact that these scientists are finding that we're having up here, on
Hmm.
Antarctica down there.
Yeah, definitely. And we don't think about that enough. Our waste, our plastic, all of that stuff is going somewhere. And,
Hmm.
Antarctica just kind of seems so out of sight, out of mind that we don't even probably think about the impact that our daily habits have on one of the, um, continents of the world that probably the fewest people in the world ever get to visit or will ever visit in their life. So it's a really good lesson on how our actions have consequences.
Yeah, and it hasn't
Um,
been open that long for us to actually tour. Like I think
oh, really?
tourism started in like the 70s or something. So there's only been like a few decades of tourism that we've been actually able to go down there and people have been able to see it, which was pretty crazy.
Well, for $10,000 to $20,000,
Yeah.
I can see why. All they have to do is just keep raising the price if it gets,
Yeah,
to
but
be too crowded.
if you think about it though, it's like because it's so remote, it's just not easily accessible to get the things
Yeah,
that you would need to visit it. Like you can't stay at a hotel and have, your laundry done or whatever. Like
yeah.
that's everything is on board that ship that you would need for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so while you were on the ship, or even just in Antarctica in general, were there any unexpected challenges that you faced or things that kind of happened that you were like, I did not anticipate that at all?
I would say one of the things we learned early on is that you're really at the mercy of the weather and
Mm.
where our ports were going to be. And like we had signed up for our activities as soon as we could, and restaurants, all those things. We tried to book everything in advance, and we were told pretty much our first day when we tried to add more stuff that um, depending upon the weather, we may not make a landing or we may not be able to kayak because there's swells or, a storm coming in. Or one day we did some kayaking and then it was kind of cut short because the ice started coming together and they didn't want us to be trapped in the ice. So the boat had to move. We had to get out of there. Like, you just have to be really flexible. And, there's some parameters around, like, they tried to accommodate like what people had planned, but you just have to kind of be ready to be, I think, nimble with the schedule. And, if you're that person that's very rigid in your scheduling, I think you may not find it as enjoyable if you're not prepared for that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, my birthday was one of the days we were down there, which was an incredible way to celebrate. But I had been like, okay, so on my birthday, I want to do a landing. I want to kayak. Yeah, neither of those things happened, but it was okay because then we kind of shifted gears and had more spa time, and Eric had surprised me with a bottle of champagne. So that was, a wonderful way to make up for the change due to the weather.
Erika, my birthday's in December, in case you want to surprise me. It's just,
sure,
inner office me some champagne or something.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things with the boat too, like, even if you weren't able though to get outside, which is what, everyone on the boat wanted to do, there was a lot of things that you could do on the boat itself. So Erika had mentioned, like, there was a beautiful like spa and pools that you could go to. They had this, saunas, they had some like snow closet, I don't know, things like that you could do on board. It's basically like a closet, the snow that comes out of like the top.
Wait, so
there's probably a proper name for it, but that's what I'm calling.
But wait, I'm just curious. So why would one want to go into the snow closet?
Well, it was in the spa area. So if you got hot from being in the sauna or steam, then you could cool off in the snow grotto.
So it was like the cold plunge, but it's snow grotto.
Yeah.
They did have the
that is fancy
cold water you could pull down on yourself too. So yes.
Yeah, like an ice bucket. So it's like the Nordic spa experience because it's a Viking boat. So they kind of with some of that. Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of Nordic spas this year because I went on a lot of cold winter vacations. So I'm very familiar with all of their hot and then cold and then hot and then cold. But a snow closet sounded like something that I've not been able to try yet. So when you were on the boat, what was a typical day like? You woke up, because you weren't, you probably had however many days at sea until you actually got to Antarctica. And then when you were there, you had different excursions and things. But what was it like each day when you would wake up? What did your typical routine look like?
So I would say typically the day would start with a daily briefing, which they would do in this big theater that they have on the boat. So most of the guests would make their way to the theater, but you could also watch this in your bedroom if you wanted to, on just like your television. So they would start telling you what are the excursions for the day or the activities, if there were going to be any special like documentaries or anything on board later, or certain presentations, music in the evening, whatever it may be. So they really just like walk you through the day and what to expect. They'll also show you a map of where the boat currently is and maybe where we traveled from. So that was interesting because some of the ports that we thought that we would be traveling to, we weren't able to. We kind of went somewhere else because of weather, but we were still able to do a lot of the activities that we had planned. So we'd start doing that. Then we'd usually grab some breakfast. Maybe that was before or after, depending upon what time we got up. And then we'd make our way to do some type of activity, either one of the landings or something on the water. Other than the kayaks, they also had these like speedboat tours that you could sign up for. Some people were signed up for. There was an underwater
submarine.
I'm losing the word, Erika. Submarine, yes, that you could go down that we did not do, but a lot of people were doing it. That was more money than we wanted to spend as an additional activity. So yeah, we'd usually do something like that. Then we'd have lunch. We'd have some free time in the afternoon where we, just explore the boat or hop in a pool or go to the spa, do yoga. Erika would run around the decks, things like that. Cocktail hour, we did trivia a few days. And so we met
Ah,
some people on the boat doing trivia.
what was the food
Um,
like
Really good.
on the
a little bit of
cruise?
everything. You eat very well on the boat. Yeah.
Really?
So they
Yeah.
Was it all
had
like very Scandinavian type dishes or?
no, they had one cafe where you could get like more Scandinavian, Norwegian fare, like waffles and brown cheese or some type of fish or soup or something.
Hmm.
But it was a lot of, I mean, they had a grill, so they would have like steaks and seafood, pizza, soups, kind of like hot things like hamburgers or whatever. And
Hmm.
then they also had like a salad bar. They had a ton of desserts,
Oh, wow.
ice cream bar type thing. There was some like, what was they calling it? Chop Chop or something. It was basically like Cold Stone Creamery where
Oh,
they'd like
okay.
chop the ice cream up and then they'd pour booze on it and add some
Ooh.
like cookies and stuff. So that was quite popular with guests. Am I forgetting anything, Erica? That was kind of like the main dining room. And then there were specialty
Yeah.
restaurants as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we did reservations. Like we had what, 2 nights at the Italian place, and then they also
Hmm.
had a more sit down, multi-course restaurant that we did one of the first nights. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it was kind of more like, open buffet style, and you could
Yeah.
choose what
And
you.
then in the evenings, they have several different bars. We found this like speakeasy bar, which is
Hmm.
basically just a bar that's kind of hidden in the bottom of the ship. But that was kind of cool because they
Ooh.
had these big windows. So it was like right above the water. So you could see, the water from like lower down.
Yeah.
And then they had other bars that were higher up. So, there are definitely regulars there that we would meet and like say hello to. But yeah, they try to make it fun for you and like keep you busy on the boat if you're not doing landings because it is
Yeah.
an older crowd, so not everybody is, probably doing the landings and getting in and out of the Zodiac boats because it takes a little bit of balance, I think, to be able to get in and
Hmm.
out of those boats. Um, am I forgetting? Oh, we were watching a lot of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in the evening,
Oh,
which is
really?
surprising.
And it's always cold in Antarctica.
Yeah, yeah. It was like a weird selection of shows to watch in the ship, but that was
Oh,
one of
wow.
them.
So for people who want to go to Antarctica, what are preparation tips that you might have for them?
So you do have to go get a medical form completed by your doctor. So
Really?
yeah,
A medical form?
yeah, they
Hmm.
wanted to make sure everything, I think, just like a lot was about mobility. I think just being able to get from, the big boat to the smaller boats.
Hmm.
Um, Also, I mean, there's medical staff on our boat, but, it's not like, okay, they're going to be able to perform surgery or anything. Um,
Hmm.
so I think they want to make sure that you'd have, the mobility, probably heart, blood pressure being okay.
Hmm.
It was interesting. One of the days we had the daily brief, they informed us that while we were sleeping, there was a much smaller boat nearby. Like I think only had maybe 8 people on it, and
Hmm.
no medical staff. And someone on that boat had a medical issue and put out the Mayday signal, any boats
Mm.
in the area. And our ship responded. The medical staff on there were able to provide medical attention. And it sounded like everyone was okay afterwards. So I think those things to kind of consider, knowing that you're not going to be able to get to a hospital. I remember we talked with someone that I think they knew someone who, the whole itinerary moved around because someone had a serious medical issue and now they had to divert to, like, say, the Shetland Islands that are kind of
Mm.
islands that are on your way from Argentina down there. So I think that's, obviously something they're trying to avoid because if this is a bucket list, once in a lifetime type trip, it's really
Hmm.
disappointing if you end up, not making it to Antarctica or missing out on a lot of the days that you'd have down there.
Oh, I'm going on the ship with the medical staff. If I decide to spend that money, there will be medical staff on my on my ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know there are, I
Wow.
actually yeah, I had a friend that went probably about a month before we did. And I
Hmm.
think one interesting thing would be to maybe look at what the specializations are of different cruise ships. So this friend of mine is a huge skier, and he picked his because they actually did skiing in Argentina and skiing on Antarctica. So that was more of a maybe, you know, like high speed extreme sports. Obviously, that's like where you're hiking up with your skis on your back to ski down, because no ski lifts or tow ropes on Antarctica. Seeing the pictures of his boat, it definitely was more like no frills kind of thing, which I enjoyed that we had our nice spa to take
I need
advantage
frills.
of.
Yeah, I need some frills.
Yeah.
So when you got to Antarctica, were there any myths or misconceptions that you had about Antarctica that were debunked during your visit?
I think I was surprised how warm it was for me. I
Mm.
was like, there were days when we were on the, on the decks in like sweaters, and like you probably didn't even need a sweater. Like it was just much warmer than
Oh,
when
wow.
we had left DC or Boston. So I was kind of surprised about that. I also was prepared for the Drake's Passage, which it's like a day to go through the Drake's Passage.
Mm.
I thought it would be really rough, and so I had gotten some like seasick medication because I just wasn't quite sure what to expect. And we were really lucky to get the Drake Lake both ways. So like the swells for us were, I don't know, like 9 meters, or not, maybe 9 feet. Like it wasn't very big. And so we got really lucky because the ship that went before us, like people were like falling off their beds, like sliding out of bed in the middle of the night. Like people were getting sick everywhere. Like we didn't have that on our boat, but I was expecting it. I thought it would be bad, and we just got really, really lucky. And then I think there were some conspiracy theories that people had shared with me that I assumed are debunked, with some military stuff going on in Antarctica, and some like secret like military testing going on, or alien testing type things in the South Pole because of the the magnetic field.
Aliens
So
in Antarctica. Wow.
yeah, those are some theories, but you
We
can be the
did.
judge if you think they're true or not. But we didn't see any aliens or anything like that while we were there.
So how did
Yeah.
traveling with a friend enhance your experience? Are you glad that you went together? I'm assuming yes, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we travel very well together, and we've traveled a lot together. So I think it's we both know how the other travels, and we both like a mix of adventure and some nice spa time and relaxation, and certainly having a friend that is an easy travel buddy is the best.
aw.
Yeah, I do. I've done a lot of solo traveling, especially I've lived in Germany a couple times, and sometimes I've got the days off, so I'm going to go. But for this one, I'm so glad that Erika was able to go, because I would have gone myself because I had this voucher that I had to use. I wasn't going to let it go to waste, but I was so happy when she said,
FYI, I'm always available in the future should you have any other vouchers. I'm like, just let me know.
That goes both ways, Diana.
I know.
So you
Oh,
have to
yeah.
invite us on your girls' trips too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I will would definitely let you know. So is there anything else about Antarctica that you feel like people would want to know about or that you haven't shared? And we'll be sharing photos and videos of your trip. So if there's any experiences from your photos and videos that you think would be interesting, let us know.
yeah, I mean, one thing
I
that
would
was
say I think a misconception is that. Go ahead. It's a little delay.
one thing that was
Go
a
ahead, Erika.
surprise was the penguins are so curious and not scared of humans. Like we actually were briefed that we had to be the ones to keep our distance because they just want to make sure that we're not, giving germs to them or vice versa. They're very strict about the big boots we had, there were boot washes before we left the ship. And when we got back, you weren't allowed to bring, any food. So we would have to be backing up from the penguins because they wanted to come check us
Wow.
out. And they would try and come on hiking trails that were meant for us to stay away from their nests. But they're like, oh, that looks like a good trail. I'm going to check that one out. So it was tempting, they're so cute. You're like, oh, but nope, we have to keep our distance. So
I just want to give them a hug.
No.
They make these very cute like penguin highways when they're going like in between like zones, I guess, on the ice. So it's like you have to make sure to stay out of their way. I would add, I think a lot of people have asked me if there's like polar bears in Antarctica, and there is not. So there's no polar bears.
Okay.
I think the biggest animal is probably like the whales or, the killer whales, blue whales. I was also surprised to learn that there are southern lights in Antarctica because we only hear about northern lights, but there's also southern lights, which I thought was cool. We weren't obviously going to see them in the summertime, but that was pretty cool.
So do southern lights look like northern lights?
I assume so. I mean, from the pictures I've looked at, they do.
Like the aurora borealis and all of that.
Yeah.
They look okay. So but they just call them southern lights?
Yeah. There's probably a scientific name for them, but
I'm sure. We'll have to figure that out. I'll have to come back and ask you what it is, or maybe I'll just Google it.
It's a trivia question.
I know. So now that you've ticked Antarctica off your list, where's next on your bucket list?
So one thing that after going down there and seeing those mountains Erika was describing, I really want to go back and hike in the Patagonia area, Argentina and Chile. Go down probably more for like warmer weather down there hiking. It just looked beautiful. So that's on my list for sure.
Yeah, I hope to join Erika with that trip, and so keep me posted on that. And for me, I definitely want to do New Zealand. I haven't really explored New Zealand, Australia, anything over in Asia yet. And then in Asia would also be Japan, would be my next 2 big trips.
Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you for sharing your Antarctica trip with me. I have to ask before we go. So you didn't run into any cute guys, any researchers, any no, I mean, it wasn't. So I'm asking for the dating crowd, for those that may want to go on a cruise trip and maybe date or see, what's out there.
Maybe a different cruise company. I would say Viking for our age range, probably not the place for dating, but we did make friends with a lot of the bartenders. So,
ooh, okay. That sounds promising. All right. So there's hope, folks.
Yeah, definitely look at the demographics of the boat. So Viking is on the older range, but there were definitely other people we met in the area. We were out in Buenos Aires that had gone on other boats that had a much younger crowd. Maybe a little less frills, but still like a nice boat. They were able to do the polar plunge and all that. So if that's important to you, definitely make sure your ship does that. Ours did not. And part of that's probably also like an environmental thing, because they don't want the oils from your skin or whatever going into the water. But
so the polar plunge is offered on some boats, and not okay.
Not every boat.
Yeah.
Okay. No, this is all very important information because you never know. I mean, I just want to make sure that people that go to Antarctica understand what the dating scene is like there.
If you're looking for an old sugar daddy, Viking's a place for you.
Yes. So you can either be bougie with an older crowd, or no frills with the party crowd. So you gotta pick and choose.
Yeah, but book fast because get those free flights, the cheaper tickets now.
Yes. Is that the only time? Do they only do it during that winter season, or?
I know for Viking, I think that's pretty much for all of them. I think just the ice is too dense for the boats to get through to make it to land otherwise. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the warmer months are going to be your January, February, but those are also the most expensive. And that's when you'll actually see more of the land versus all the snow that we saw.
So November through February-ish is the best
Yep.
is that season, the
Yes.
Antarctica season. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I won't be making that happen this year for my birthday, but so we'll still be looking out for that
Start
bottle of
saving
champagne,
now.
Erica.
Making a note, Diane.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much. I appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time to talk about your Antarctica trip. I look forward to any of the questions that we might get from viewers who are listening, who have maybe wanted to go to Antarctica or were too scared to go just because it's the unknown and it just seems so inaccessible. But as you can see, it is accessible if you have the funds. So thank you so much again for your time. And for those of you who are listening, don't forget to subscribe to the Cosmopolite Collective. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erika.